Hi, my name is Lisa Porter, and this will be a fifth grade writing lesson. It would be at the about the beginning of the year. We would be in maybe October, and we would be writing a scary story, a personal narrative. I would say good morning to the class, and I would ask them, go ahead and get out your agenda, and we're going to write down our clear target for the day. And our clear target would be on the board like it always is, and our clear target would say, I can write the beginning of my personal narrative. And so I always say it, and then they can see it, they heard it, and then they write it in their agenda. And then I would say, okay, you can go ahead and put that away. And then we would review, what is a personal narrative? And we would have talked about it the day before, and so they know that a personal narrative is a story. And we built some excitement yesterday. I modeled for them what my story was going to be about. A first time that I scared my sister, who's 10 years younger than me. And they're excited about it. They're ready to write. And so I would pass out a graphic organizer because I like to give kids a paper copy if they would like to have it. And then I would explain to them that the graphic organizer that we're going to use is also available on our Google Classroom. And they can type if they would rather. And also that gives kids who need to use the speech to text accommodation the ability to do that. Saves me some time from having to scribe for several students. So, all right, so today we're going to write the beginning of our personal narrative. Remember that you are a character in your story. Yesterday we talked about what we're going to write about, and we talked about who the characters were going to be. It is okay if your story is not 100% true, but it does need to be realistic, okay? So we're not going to write about dinosaurs eating people. It's going to be something that actually happened, a time that you scared someone or that you were scared. So on your graphic organizer, you're going to see at the top a hook. Who can tell me what a hook is? And so some might know that a hook is the first sentence. Usually they don't know the purpose of a hook. And so why do we have a hook? And so the purpose is to hook your reader. And so I would talk about, have you ever been fishing? Yeah, and so what do you put on the end of your line? A hook. And what's the purpose of the hook? To catch a fish. And so in this analogy, you are the fisherman, and your words, your story, is the hook. And you want to hook a reader, bring them in, make them want to read the whole story that you wrote, okay? So literally, we're trying to hook a reader, okay? And we're going to do that with our words. And so we're going to go through 4 ways. There's many ways that you can hook your reader, but today I'm going to teach you about 4 ways. And I would have this in a PowerPoint, a Google slide, and it would also be in front of them. And we're just going to go through 4 ways to hook your reader. And so the first way that you can hook your reader is by asking a question. So, you know your story is about scaring someone, a time that you were scared, a time you scared someone. So what's a question that you might ask someone about being scared? And I'll give them a minute to think, a half minute, and then they would say something like, have you ever been scared? Yeah, great. That's a great start. So let's see if we can make it a little more exciting, a little deeper than have you ever been scared? Great. Have you ever been so scared you peed your pants? Have you ever been so scared you thought you were going to die? Have you ever been, think about questions like that, questions that build excitement and make your reader want to read what you've written. That's the goal. And so, the first way you can hook your reader is by asking a question. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, though, that when you get into middle school and you become better writers, more experienced writers, a question is the weakest form of hook, okay? So don't get too tied to it. It's okay to use now, we're 5th graders, but just know that as you become more mature in your writing, you're going to want to step out and use some of these other ways, okay? So the second way to hook your reader is to define an important term. And so you might think, this is a little bit hard with this topic, but maybe you think about a synonym for scared. We might even look those up. So you might have like terrified or petrified or some other word. And maybe it's a word that you don't even know what it means. And so you look it up and you find out that petrified means blah, 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 blah. And so that would be your first sentence. Petrified actually means being scared, too scared to move, or so scared that you can't act, whatever petrified means. And that's just one example. So the first way is to ask a question. The second way is to define an important term. The third way to hook your reader is to give in it a surprising fact or an interesting fact. And so you might say, 9 out of 10 people enjoy being scared. That might be an interesting fact. This would require you to do a little research and maybe look up an important fact or a surprising statistic about being scared. Being scared releases dopamine in the brain. Dopamine causes your body to think that you're having pleasure, that you're enjoying something, or makes you happy. And so those are some surprising facts or statistics that you could use. So the first way is ask a question. The second way is to define an important term, a big word. The third way is to give a surprising fact. And the fourth way that I'm going to tell you right now is to use a quote, maybe by a famous person. And by famous, I mean someone that you don't have to explain. So if I said Abraham Lincoln said, that would be an important person. I wouldn't have to explain to you who Abraham Lincoln is. So a famous quote that you could use might be Franklin D. Roosevelt said, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And so that's a pretty famous quote that you could use. I'd have this in a PowerPoint slide. And so you go ahead and go through the 4 ways. We review them several times, what they are. They're on the paper in front of them, or they're on the Google Doc. And now I say, you know what your story is going to be about. You know who your characters are. What would be a good hook for your paper? And I want you to go ahead and write it or type it in that blank line that says my hook. And they would do that. Some might raise their hand. We could spend, 20 minutes on this, and some kids still won't be able to put anything on paper. And so I give them 2 minutes, ask for examples when they have it, and that might spur some other kids to write some stuff down. If it doesn't, that's okay. I'm not going to panic. I'm going to meet with them one-on-one once we're finished with the lesson. And so then we move on to the second section of the beginning, which would be detail sentences, just information sentences, sentences to let your reader know what your paragraph's going to be about. And so I would go back to reviewing my story from the day before. My story is about my sister and I staying up and watching Hocus Pocus. That was a rare thing for us to be able to do. And so, I would just come up with a couple of sentences, model for them, a couple of sentences to introduce my topic. And then, on my graphic organizer, my sentences would already be there. And then there would be a space for them to write their sentences. And again, I would go ahead with students and say, someone give me a good detail sentence that you came up with. Okay, that's excellent. Did you think about this? Oh, I like that. Could you add this? And just give feedback right there as they're giving me examples. And again, that would help other kids understand, give them more examples of what to write. So you have your hook and you have your detail sentences. Your detail sentences might be introducing your setting, telling where your story took place. What time of day is it? Like, for example, mine took place at night. After my parents went to bed. That's an important detail about my story, so I need to make sure that my reader knows that. So you're going to set the setting, you're going to tell who's there, what characters are in your story, and a little bit about what's going on. Your conclusion sentence needs to let your reader know what's coming next. So you start with your hook. Have you ever been scared? Or there's nothing to fear but fear itself, or whatever way you choose to hook your audience. And then you set the scene. One time late at night, my parents let my sister and I set up to watch a late movie. We were in our living room, all the lights were out, we made popcorn. It was a special occasion. We were having a lot of fun. Things like that. Just a couple of sentences giving some details about what time of day it is, what time of year it is. It's Halloween, and so we decided to watch a scary movie. And for once, our parents said yes. Something like that. Just a couple of detail sentences. And then you need to give one sentence called a concluding sentence for just your beginning. But its job is to let your reader know what's coming next, okay, in this case. And so your sentence might be a lead into your body or your middle of your paper. So it might be something like, who knew that by the end of the night we would all be screaming? Or what started out as a fun movie night with my sister took an unexpected turn. Let your reader know something's coming. Something like that. So you're going to have your hook, which is just one sentence. You're going to have 2 to 3 detail sentences. You can have more, but I don't think you can have less than 2 because you need to tell where you are and who is there. So at least 2 sentences for that. And then you need to have that last part of your beginning, which would be your conclusion sentence, and just kind of give your reader a little taste, a little foreshadowing of what's coming. So that again, you're building that excitement and making your reader want to read your paper. So after you're finished, or after we're finished doing the lesson, I would, of course, give kids after each section. You know, we talk about the hook, they write their hook. We talk about detail sentences. I ask students to give me examples of detail sentences, and then they actually write or type their detail sentences right then. Conclusion sentence, I give them an example, I model for them. I take other examples from students. They write their conclusion sentence right there on the spot. And then we put it all together. So if they've typed it, we copy and paste it one section or one sentence at a time down to the bottom so they have their nice introduction paragraph, their nice beginning. Students that are having trouble, I might say 5 at a time, we're going to come to the back table. If you need help with your hook, come now. And so I'll do, usually only 1 or 2 will have trouble with the hook. Get them squared away. I don't do it for them, but I just ask them questions. What kind of hook would you like to use? Which one do you think would be the most exciting? Which one really fits your story best? Do you want to do some research? Let's look up and see if we can find an exciting fact or a detail or a word for you to give a definition of if you like that one. And I'll help them come up with that, especially since this is our first time. So then we would come to the back table and we would work together. And then I would say, okay, now we're moving on to detail sentences. If you're sitting there and you don't have your detail sentences yet, come see me. And I would, do 4 or 5 at a time at the back table. And then lastly, I would say, okay, who needs help with that conclusion sentence? That last sentence in your beginning that lets your reader know kind of what's coming next. And I would help them. And then kids that are already finished, that were able to do it without my help, they would move on to the next thing. Depending on the lesson, sometimes, probably not the first time, but if it wasn't our first time writing, I would let them move on to the middle because they would already have that graphic organizer. They would already have practiced. This time, since it's our first time, they would move on to iReady, or at my school we use Summit, and so there's always self-directing to do. There's always notes to take or assessments to take, and they know what that next thing is. If I was a self-contained classroom, they might move on to another subject or something that they needed more help on or more time on from the previous day's lessons or something. They could read a book. We would have those things established, and they would know what to do next. To make sure that every kid gets what they need, I would do that small group time at the end. And then my clear target at the beginning was that I can write a beginning for my personal narrative, and I would know that every student achieved that because I would do kind of a checklist. I'm mentally kind of doing a checklist when I'm asking for examples. So I know these 6 kids already have their hook and details. Oh yeah, they got it. I can tell they did. But then I would, once they have it written, then one next thing that they would have to do would be to type it. And so once they have it typed, they can share it on our Google Classroom, or they can just show me their screen and I can real quick read through it. But putting it in bite-sized pieces, I'm able to give a more immediate feedback, where if I had all the whole papers to read, the whole beginning, middle, end to read for every student, it would take me much longer to go through all that and give immediate feedback. And so the lesson that would come next would be, we would be working on our middle, and then we would work on our end. And writing is one of my favorite things to teach. I think you spend a lot of time at the beginning going step by step, modeling. I do, we do, you do, so that it builds their confidence as a writer. I'm constantly planting seeds and giving them more tools for their writing toolbox so that eventually they become more confident in their ability to write, and they don't need me as much, which is what you want. And they are more willing to take risks, and they kind of back off from that I have to ask a question hook, and that's exciting to see.